welcome to the Ford Neighborhood Advisory Council meeting for the 17th of September 2018. You've got an outline of an agenda at your table. Let me do a couple things before we go through and ask everybody to introduce themselves. The entire membership of the NAC is here, including our alternate. But before that, let's go over what's on your table. There's basically two documents, one to share because they're expensive to make, and basically I ran out of paper, so we couldn't make them for everybody tonight. And that is the big document you have. This is a compilation of all the emails, phone calls, small meetings, anything that anyone on the NAC heard from anyone in the impact area between when we first started and the 16th, because the 16th, yesterday, was the date that we submitted our community impact list to Ford Motor Company and the city. And the second item you have is the actual community impact report. This impact report are the items that individual members of the NAC, the 9 of us, submitted to the group to have put on the formal list that will go to Ford and the city for a response on. It is not, the document is not a cumulative number. This is individual asks, ideas that came from individual members. You have the full document here, and I think there's enough for everybody. So you have your own to take with you. So that was the first thing. I want to quickly thank IBW for hosting us again. They've done a phenomenal job. And thank you to Ford for providing wonderful dinners. And I'd like to also thank David Esparza and IBW for providing us with this space in the back of the room, which is a place where anyone here can go to look at aerials of the work that's going to be going on, what's part of the restoration of the station, and other parts of the neighborhood. Also, there are documents that you can leaf through if you want to take a look at them. This NAC very much is committed to transparency and to everybody here having access to as much information as we can. So that's what we have on the tables. So can we just start with David Esparza, and we'll all go down and say our names. I don't think there's anybody here who hasn't been here before, but just in case, meet your NAC, please.
Good evening. My name's David Esparza. I'm a resident and homeowner in Corktown, and glad to be part of this process.
Good evening, Aaliyah Sabri. I'm a resident of Hubbard Richard.
Hi, I'm Nicole Rittenauer. I'm a resident of Corktown.
Good evening. My name is Ken Jameson. I'm a homeowner, and I live in Corktown.
Sheila Cockrell, a resident of Corktown.
Mike Ransom, a resident and a business owner in Corktown.
Jerry Paffendorf, a resident of Corktown.
Hey, Heather McEwen, resident of Corktown, living around Church Street.
Hi, I'm Robin Ussery, and I'm a resident and representative of North Corktown.
I'm the alternate, Monsignor Chuck Lisenk, and I'm a resident of Richard.
Okay, what we're going to do this evening is the NAC, on behalf of the NAC, I really want to thank particularly Nikki Rittenauer and Heather McEwen for putting together this document. This is no small feat to keep track of all this information and put it in order. So at this point, this time I'm going to ask Nikki to present the document, walk through it with us so everybody here is aware of what the specific list of ideas and requests were by the members of the NAC that are being made formally as of yesterday and sort of publicly today from the Ford NAC to Ford Motor Company and the City of Detroit. So Nikki, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. So I was planning just to sort of have like a very brief overview of what of our list here. It is pretty extensive. It's not really weighted in any way right now. It is the items are grouped, but they're sort of individual contributions from each 9 of us. So in general, they fit sort of into 2 categories. So some are tied to specific programs or funds, and then some are more general asks for commitments or questions. And some of these are directed at Ford, and then some are directed at the city, and some we weren't sure who, so they're a little open-ended. In general, the ones that are tied to specific programs or funds have to do with housing, property tax abatements, property tax relief, home and business repair assistance, and park improvements. There's also quite a bit about affordable housing, scholarships, mentorships, and agreements about any daycares and schools, as well as items about hiring practices and local hiring specifically. There's a section about a community-controlled grant and as well as a community-controlled fund. And then there's a couple that talk about the continuation of the NAC and the continuation of an agreement between Ford and the community and a council moving forward. Some of the specific asks or questions were about opening a relationship, a formal relationship with the DPD, commitments for no more surface parking, retail on parking garages, and items about the view of parking garages and the view of the train station. There was also items about public use of the garages that they're going to build, as well as public use of the buildings. There's an item about public art funding. There's a lot about environmental protection, soil, air monitoring, and those type of things, and how those things will be made available. We ask for a hotline or a website to be set up, not only for environmental information, but also just general information or complaints. We ask that they publish a traffic plan, both during and after construction, as well as things like sticking to normal working hours. We have a few items about connecting the different impact areas, bikeable, walkable, and making connections between all of the neighborhoods. There's also what we talked about at the last meeting, that we would like sort of first access to the impact area residents on any mobility pilot projects or any sort of mobility improvements that Ford is working on that are happening in the neighborhood. I just wanted to do a really brief overview. You guys will have a copy of it. I was hoping that this meeting would be more a response from the city and Ford. We did only give this to them yesterday, but I just wanted to thank them and thank everybody else on the board for all their hard work.
I think a couple of things. One, we made a clear distinction between community benefits and mitigation responsibilities, that there's expectations about, noise and construction, et cetera, that should be memorialized in a community benefit agreement, but that's basically everybody following the laws that they're supposed to follow, and the city doing its job at enforcement and oversight. And then the community benefits will be in sort of the other areas that Nikki just laid out. One thing I did want to also make clear, I'm sure ask about or make sure everyone has received. There was an outstanding request from Ford regarding a listing of all of the properties that Ford owns. I believe we all got that today.
Yeah, so we received that a few hours prior to the meeting, so I didn't have a chance to sort of put it out on Facebook next door and through the email list, so that will follow this meeting today. It's a map graphic along with an Excel spreadsheet showing the parcels and the exact addresses of what they do own at this time.
Okay. So, any other specific comments anybody on the NAC wants to make? Okay.
I would just say maybe on that property list, I think everyone was very curious about it, and from what I saw, that there really weren't any surprises. It was the projects that we know about, and then the area where the parking garage will be next to 75. there weren't any other that I don't think anyone was already sort of aware of.
I guess there were some rumors running around about acquisitions, but that the list that we've received makes it clear it's what we've known about for some time.
I guess just
Yes.
also another piece I'd like to add, it is one of the line items that we have in here, in that we did share this larger document, with Ford and the city, so they can see asks, so they sort of have the opportunity to hear what everyone in the community has said to us. And also, this is a living document for us. We are still, we have read all of the surveys and all of the emails that have come in, and just sort of following up with the data entry into this Google document.
Okay, any other comments? Yes.
Are you saying that not everything that is here has been put here?
No, well, we have read everything that was given to us through SurveyMonkeys, through all of our community meetings, et cetera, and we essentially boiled it down to this document. I have not, if someone specifically doesn't see their name, I haven't caught up with all of the data entry into this one. But of the highlights of this one have ended up in here from the NAC membership.
Well, I would say that I'm not sure that that's completely true, because the arts and culture stuff that is listed in a few places in there is not showing up anywhere in here, and also the listing and discussion around agriculture and land use is also not showing up here.
Okay, a couple things here. When people speak, I'd like to give your name and your neighborhood, so we're clear on who's talking. Secondly, the role of the NAC is to collect the information, and then as selected or elected representatives in both cases, to distill that down and craft an ask that is representative of the priorities that people who are on the NAC feel. So it's not going to reflect every single idea that everyone put in. We've heard them all, we've read them all, but there's an editing responsibility that being a member of the NAC requires. So not everything's going to be here, but Ford will be aware of, through the large document, of everything that was put forward by anybody who participated in this process. Okay. So if a representative from Ford or the city want to offer any remarks? Here.
Thanks, Chris. Just, again, thank you very much to the NAC. Everybody, well, a ton of work has been done over the last few weeks, and even over the last week, the 2 meetings last week and now. So thank you very much. I know we received this, and we're just starting to go through it now. Our expectation is to take quite a bit of time to go through each line, give it its due diligence on every one of the items, and give you a very good and thorough response next week. I'm sure as we go through the week, if we have questions, we'll make sure we get our notes back out to everybody. But again, want to thank everybody here on the NAC, but also everybody in the community for all of the hard work in coming every week. I know I see all the same faces, and as we talked that first meeting way back when we started, how important it was that you came and lent your voice to this process and make sure we had a good community process. I think we've really done a really good job, and I think now we'll respond back to this. So thank you very much. And I know our Ford team is very happy and appreciative of all your help. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Yes. At this point, I want to open this up for public comment. If you could give your name and your neighborhood. We're going to, we'll see how this goes. We're not going to get, we're running really, we've got plenty of time here, so we'll hear some questions.
I just have a question about the format of this document,
Yes.
some of the boxes are grayed out. Does that mean that they are headings for the items that follow those? Because it wasn't real obvious, to me, anyway. In other words,
Yeah, Heather?
so if I'm reading 5 million investment in affordable housing leverage fund, and then there's 1, 2, 3 items underneath that, is that supposed to be part of that leverage fund?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
So to highlight that, the sort of gray boxes are an attempt to sort of title the section that is directly below it.
Until the next gray box.
Correct.
Right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby. I'm actually from Southwest Detroit, and this is my first meeting, so new face. And I'm really sorry for this question because I'm sure it could have been answered if I was engaged earlier. But if there is any option for the future talking about what the impact area actually is, I'm very concerned that we're just talking about Corktown, but Corktown is right next to Southwest Detroit. We know how development works very quickly and what that looks like in areas and what that means for residents who don't have as many means. So maybe not for this meeting, but is there any space or conversation for what's going to happen when there's larger impact and when it actually starts to feed into the rest of the area in Detroit?
I think, well, the impact area was created by the City of Detroit Planning and Development Department. It picked North Corktown. It picked what we've called in our discussions historic Corktown and part of the Hubbard-Richard community. And that, so we've not had, there's been no time for us to sort of go back in and debate that question, or this would be taking longer than it has already. So I think, personally, I think that's a legitimate question. This, you know, that can be looked at, not in relationship to this particular benefit agreement, because this has to be put through the process, completed here, and then get into consideration by the administration and the city council to be memorialized in the development agreement that will be executed between Ford and the city of Detroit. If it's in the development agreement, that's what makes it executable and accountable. So the boundaries are not going to shift, but that's not to say that people can't just, who live in this community, can't figure out how to come together and get out of the silos and figure out how to work together. That would be a great concept.
As a follow-up, you're saying that there's a chance that in the development agreement that's being talked about, is this currently being talked about then?
No. Post the development agreement. This development agreement,
Right.
this community benefit agreement will be for the designated
Yes.
area that was created by by planning and development.
Oh, so when you mention development agreement, it's the same one. It's the community development agreement, and then, okay, because you said like 2 different ways. So I thought it was something different that in the future I can try to hone in more and be more engaged with. But,
Sure.
Okay.
Well, there's a strategic framework, which I'm not sure how far it goes into Southwest, because there's a Southwest strategic framework that planning and development is doing, but clearly there could be some connection between that strategic framework and the Corktown one that goes all the way up to Grand River and Trumbull.
Yeah, for sure. Because I'm looking at 4210 right down Michigan Avenue, where
Sure.
it connects Dearborn and Detroit, and I
Right.
can just see that being developed
Right,
completely. But what does that look like for community agreements?
right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Len Lozich, Corktown resident. I've missed some of the meetings, and I can't read the real fine type tonight. I forgot my glasses. So I'm wondering, and I would assume it has been addressed, the idea of capital improvements of the streets and sidewalks in the area. I'm particularly thinking now of Trumbull, because I see some street work being started on Trumbull on the Tiger Stadium site. Also, I'm assuming the city, possibly state, will be addressing Michigan Avenue through Corktown in front of Michigan Central. Then also streets like Porter, Bagley. Is there a consideration and/or an ask for street improvements?
I believe we talked about sidewalks. I don't know if the representative of the city, there's ongoing conversations with the state of Michigan, I assume. Vince, is that accurate? Or MDOT?
So we have here, I'm Vince Keenan with the Mayor's Office, we have here John Savills with Planning and Development, who is running the broader planning study. And then we also have, and I don't mean to put her on the spot, but we do have some representation from MDOT here that are going to be working on the Pell study for Michigan Avenue. So there's a number of different studies being prompted by the forward impact, and we'll know more over the course of the next year about what the outcomes of those studies are.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
My name is Rhonda Green. I'm a resident of North Corktown, also a business owner. I wanted to raise again the concept of art being a priority in this proposal or this ask. There's always been a relationship between creativity and innovation, right? And I think we have a real opportunity, given the historic nature of these areas and the culturally rich nature of these areas, to steward in some way this kind of marriage between innovation and creativity and culture, right? That will create the appeal of this to top talent, which is something that I know Ford is trying to do, and appeal to residents to come be here and to be a destination, right? To continue to be a destination for that. There's always been a marriage between artists and innovation, and like engineers and scientists. So I just really want to stress that. I know when we received the first data for the survey, promoting and preserving the historic cultural value of these areas was the top response, and I don't see it reflected here. And so I just wonder where it got buried in the data, and I think it should be pulled out. The other thing I just say under this workforce development, which was another priority, it talks about a contribution to Go Lightly Tech. And I'm not sure where that's located, but I know that there are 2 schools, at least 2, in the impact area, and I think they should be prioritized.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions or comments? Okay. Well, there's a hand.
Well, there's no page numbers, but there's a $5 million investment to the Affordable Housing Leverage Fund. That's the heading, and then there are several initiatives underneath it. And then the last initiative is to contribute to the Detroit Affordable Housing Development and Preservation Fund. So is that $5 million to the leverage fund, and through the leverage fund, these other initiatives will receive funding?
That is the proposal. That's what's going to go in, and there'll be a response to all of that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood the structure
It's
of
not $5 million each.
So $5 million total, and then the
Total,
leverage fund
and
will.
then seeking input from, the people who actually are managing these funds as to what we'll get in terms of the basic principles that we operated from here, which is that we want to make sure that there's, that these 3 impacted communities retain their culture, retain the people who are part of it for as long as people want to be here, that nobody gets pushed out. So that where do we put dollars that helps keep residents here and businesses here that have been here? So the only change that happens is naturally occurring choices that people make, not people being pushed out because it costs too much. So we're going to look to the city to provide some insight as to what's the most strategic place to put the dollars. If this proposal is accepted, then there's no telling whether it will be, because it's one of many.
So the 3 initiatives underneath are the NAC suggestions for how the city should distribute the $5 million, but they're asking for $5 million. And then the 3 initiatives, housing initiatives underneath, are the preferences for the community. Is that
That would be a
Good
fair way
framing,
to
okay.
put it, an initial preference. We'll see, you know, what comes.
I'm Paul Emery in North Corktown. Can you just, in one sentence, distinguish between the 12 million community control grant and the 12 million community controlled permanent fund? Or did you just hiccup and put it in twice?
Sure.
I think I can do it in one sentence. The grant fund is designed to be granted and spent, so eventually the money runs out. And then the permanent fund is designed to be lent and returned and to grow over time. Was that one sentence, maybe two?
Other questions or comments? Okay, well, I think then we're going to, oh, I'm sorry. Tim?
My name's Tim McKay. I'm a resident of Corktown in the Historic District. We had mentioned in the process of offering up loan funds and possible grants for property improvement for properties, and there's two items here. Property owners within the impact area may apply for loans, make necessary renovations. Does that include rental property owners? And then the other question I have is the loan activity may be considered acceptable if voted by, what does that exactly mean?
Say it again, Tim.
It's the bottom of the, there's no page number, but it's, yeah, it's after the permanent fund. It's on the bottom of the page. It's other loan activities may be considered acceptable if voted by the NAC. My specific question is, and what we had tried to put forth in our request was, if there were owner-occupied multiple unit buildings, which there are several, if those could be considered for home improvement loans and restoration grants or loans. And I think that needed to be articulated because it was entered. But I'm curious about that other loan activities. What would that be?
I think the intention of that line, and hopefully this makes sense, is that there are lots of different benefits that have been asked for, and since the fund is designed to exist over a period of time, that people will necessarily come up with ideas that have not been captured.
Gotcha.
But as long as they're within the spirit of benefits, there should be a way to say that, oh, obviously that's a good one.
I see. Great. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, unless there's other comments, we've distributed this to you. Next week on the 24th at 6 p.m., Ford will be here to respond to the community impact list that's been provided. And yes, and I see that Mr. Arthur Jemison would like, yes, please. I keep forgetting your new title. It's very long.
Good evening, members of the NAC. I just have one clarifying question for you about the document. So I was present on Friday, last Friday evening, when there was a broader discussion of this, and there were two kind of spheres, ideas that all the ideas are presented here in kind of a la carte fashion, and there was one formulation that spoke to about $15 million of impacts, and which is one thing to consider, and then there was another set of proposals that were related to a $24 million package of things, and they're all sort of mixed in here together, which is fine, but I just wanted to make sure that as Ford is listening and looking at those, that they understand that they're part of one thing is one thing and the other thing is the other thing. Am I misunderstanding what's in here? I just want to ask that clarification.
That is absolutely correct. Two things here. What we indicated is that what's in here is a compilation of impact issues offered by individual NAC members for response by the developer. This is not a cumulated number here. This does not all add up. It is now, here's our best thinking, distilling everything that we heard from people in the community, based in part on the kinds of experiences and participation that everybody up here's had in different ways in the impacted communities. This is what we are suggesting. It is not cumulative, and they all stand on their own. Where's Chris? Person back here.
We were here for a meeting, we had to put on them papers, on them little sticky papers. I'm wondering, did you take everybody's top 3 ideals and put them in this?
No, they're part of the big report.
That's what I'm talking
They're
about.
part of this report here.
Big report right here,
They're part of this report,
right here.
yes.
Did you take everybody's top 3 and put them in this?
Yes.
Because this lady last week asked, was this gonna be negotiable? Where we could negotiate for this?
The negotiation.
And you said yes.
The negotiation happens this way. We took this list, and then we, as the NAC members, put this list together. This is the list that will be negotiated with Ford between now, they're gonna respond next week, and we'll take it from there.
But will the people in the neighborhood get to negotiate this with
No,
Ford?
the NAC is doing the negotiation, ma'am. That's why we're here. Is the Community Benefits Ordinance describes that there's a Neighborhood Advisory Council that does the pulling together and does the interaction with the developer. That's why we're here.
Okay.
We're taking
Do
input.
us, as the neighbors
Yes.
in this neighborhood that's gonna be impacted by Ford,
Yes.
do we get to negotiate this with you guys?
Well, we've taken into account what you all have, what you've provided to us, and this is
But
our
you're not,
best
but
judgment.
you're not answering my
Well,
question.
the question is, everybody, every issue that everyone raised here is not going to be here.
The top 3 that you took from everybody.
That was for us to distill down what were the priority issues that people across the 3 impacted areas had. That has been taken into account in the creation of this document.
Okay, but this lady right here asked if we could negotiate the top 3 decisions that you took.
Well, the answer is
And
that,
you said yes.
Well, that is not, I do not recall that particular conversation because the negotiation is going to be between the NAC and Ford and the city.
That's what you said last week. But she asked, would we be able to negotiate with you? And you said yes.
I don't recall that, so I appreciate, your input. We believe we have taken into account the top 3 issues that everyone identified and considered them as we put this document together. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, you mentioned you're getting a response from Ford next week. Do you have more, just any more information about how the process unfolds after that? You said, we'll go from there, but is there actually, a process that's dictated beyond that Ford response next week?
Well, the ultimate thing we have to get to, and the question is, is it even possible to do that next week? We're gonna have to check, play it out, is at some point, the NAC will need to vote on the benefit proposal that is brought back by Ford to the NAC to say, here's what we offer as the community benefits.
And is there, other than, finding out about these meetings and coming to them, is there a way that the public is kept informed of, it sounds like a little ad hoc, and so I'm just wondering, is that, how are we all kept informed of how this process moves forward?
Well, you'll be kept informed on the Facebook page, on the city's website, via the email list. If additional meetings are scheduled, you'll be notified. That would be the best way to reach out to people on the NAC if you want some specific information. But if there are, and the negotiation process is just beginning, so I don't want to. We got to see what Ford says, and then the process begins. We will absolutely keep everyone informed as to that process, and when there are meetings of the NAC, you will be advised of them.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone.
So have we actually listed how much the public subsidy is? And then we have this document right here that's a little fluid and so forth. But is this, so this is what they're going to look at as a list of asks, correct?
Correct.
And then how much does this amount to? If it, because some of it's a little bit like, doesn't have like a dollar figure. Are we looking at that as NAC members, looking at how much does this cost? The other thing too, when I see benefit agreements, sometimes it's the city paying for it. So making sure we differentiate between MDOT doing a study, well, that's the public. What is Ford putting to the table and how much, are they putting forward on that? So I'm curious as the total of what, because I think they're doing 30 years instead of 15 years, which is typical. But are we looking at the total cost of what we're giving up, right? And then what we're getting in return at the end? Are you all putting that as part of your process? Because we're not going to be in the room possibly, and as you're moving forward, right, Ms. Cockrell, they're going to be able to come back and say, yes, no, yes, yes, no, no. Maybe Ford Foundation could do that, or whatever it is that the process is, that we're not going to always be privy to, right? But I'm saying, are we looking at what we're giving up versus what they're putting forward as a company? Dollar by dollar.
Sure. First of all, as I said a moment ago, this is not a cumulative list in terms of numbers. Again, I guess I can speak for myself. Once we get a response, there'll be a number attached to every response that we're taking a look at there'll be a number attached to every positive response that we will then evaluate. As a member of the NAC, I will evaluate in relationship to the overall, the scale of the project, the role that the project plays in the impact area and the city, what the actual numbers are, et cetera, and then that will be, that we will all use whatever criteria we use to determine whether or not the numbers that are attached to the items that are part of the benefit agreement constitute a community benefit agreement that we're willing to support by a majority vote.
Sheila, do you mind if I
Yes,
share?
go right ahead.
So maybe a helpful piece of context, and again, every CBA process has been different. To use some numbers that we have talked about on the panel previously, the size of the investment that Ford is talking about making is $740 million, and the size of the incentive package that they're seeking is $240 million over 30-some years. Nationally, the averages that get spent on community benefit arrangements are between 7 and 10% of the overall project investment. And so in this case, that would put it into the range of 50-something to $74 million in benefits. And that doesn't mean money of that size necessarily, but money gets spent on or services get offered that provide that amount of benefit if it were to fit the national average. Inside of the proposed benefits here, there are a few items that do ask for money to be outlaid. There's the $15 million that goes to the 3 city-operated programs. So the Affordable Housing Program, the Strategic Neighborhood Fund, and the Workforce Development Fund. And then the resident-controlled funds, which together add up to $24 million, that number actually came from triangulating what the size of the ask for the incentives was, and asking for 10% of that to be put up as funds that can be controlled by people in the neighborhood on benefits that they think should happen, and that can be controlled over a period of time so that we can respond as things change around us. And so that became a longer story than I wanted to share, but I do think that it's helpful when there's an infinity of ways that the playing field could be arranged, that those are some dollar amounts. And so that would mean that in our ask, there's a $39 million dollar ask that could happen over time, meaning funds don't need to all be put in place at once. It can happen over a period of years. And then there are a number of benefit asks that if Ford were to ask on them, were to approve them, could add up to something closer to that 7 to 10% of the project cost.
I sort of wanted to speak only for myself at this point, in that as my part of this, I was hoping to never talk strictly about money. I wanted to talk about community benefits, which is why in a lot of the asks that I crafted were very specific. So I think that like, I always felt like I wouldn't be able to understand things that are already being funded by the city, things that are already being thought about. So the parts that I wanted to focus on were specific things that would benefit our community. And that why this document that you see is a little bit, that is a little bit longer is because everyone of the 9 of us sort of had different ideas. And so we all put our ideas in here. So I was never under the understanding that we were supposed to tie dollar amounts because frankly, I don't have that knowledge. And so I was focusing on benefits. I just wanted to make that clear.
No, and I understand that, and it's really difficult, right, Ms. Cockrell, but,
No, let me hear from my NAC member.
oh, okay, I didn't, Mr. Esposito.
I was in agreement with Nicole on that. I never thought it was our charge to rough out some costs, some numbers, some ballparks. Just no time for that, and I just don't think that was part of our purview, so.
We can try to help you with that. So one of the things I really think is important, just to answer yours, Jerry, the national average, that's something I always look at, and I know a lot of us that have been working on community benefits process has looked at, but one of the things that I think is different is the challenges that we have in the city and where the development is happening, right? I mean, I think we need to take in consideration that kind of impact. I also, when you say $240 million is what they're asking for, is that the cap? Because they're talking about over, 30-year period? Is that the cap? So, because I want you to know from our experience with the stadium, they said 238 million as a state representative when I was sitting there, and now it's up to 600 million. So I'm just curious, is that the cap? Or is this per year, So we need that kind of transparency happen, because I don't want my residents to think they're only getting 240 million, when it sounds like they're getting more than that.
So if I can answer, my name is Sarah Pavelko. I work with the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. And a couple of weeks ago, we gave a full presentation on the incentive package that Ford has requested and how each of those incentives work, as well as how we came to the estimates for what that benefit would be for Ford, as well as the full net benefit analysis and the but-for analysis that we did for this incentive package. So, and that presentation is online. There was the presentation and then a follow-up presentation to answer all of the questions that were asked from that. But I'll answer one specific thing that is not in there, which is your question about a cap. This incentive is not a dollar figure that the city is writing a check for. Ford is not receiving a direct payment for any of the incentives that they've asked for. Well, right now, those taxes are not currently being generated. So so right now the city collects about $1 million of taxes on that property. And by the city, it's actually all taxing jurisdictions. So the city receives about $200,000 for those properties. The city will, in the future, between all of the taxes that will be generated from this new development, will receive approximately $10 million a year in net of these abatements. Sorry, you're saying something, but I can't.
Okay, all right.
No, every year for the next 30 years, while those abatements are in place, the net amount of total taxes collected across those projects is $10 million.
But my question was, how much are they going to get total over 30 years?
So, like I said, Ford does not receive any money. Oh, for the incentives, it's $3 million a year. And it's an estimated amount because the city does not do property tax values in advance of the property being built. So we don't know the actual tax benefit.
So it sounds like it's closer to 900 million over the next.
I'm not quite sure.
Okay. No,
where
all
that
right.
number came from.
Thank you.
Hold on, so you don't know?
No, I don't know where you said 900 million.
So how, you said over the years, what is the total? That's what it sounds like.
The total is $240 million.
And that's, but you didn't answer whether or not it was the cap. So is that a low guess or a high guess?
No, I would say that that's a moderate guess. It's not a,
So that's the mean. It could be much higher, or it could be lower.
no, I mean, so the,
And we are pushing on
Right.
this. This is really important
Okay.
for us to know.
What, okay, now, so what you're saying is that right now the city's getting $200,000 from a piece of property that is going to be developed, spending $740 million. That part of the deal to get that $740 million spent is a suite of tax abatements that will abate various taxes for various dimensions of this, but that the net of all of that will be that there will be $10 million a year in taxes that will then be forthcoming.
correct. And all of this includes a number of assumptions. And so you asked me, is it high, is it low? Well, the $10 million estimate of the net benefit, that also could be a low estimate. If retail sales are higher, if income taxes are higher because of higher salaries, there's a number of reasons why that net benefit could be higher. There's also reasons why it could be lower. But using the information that we have available, that's how the estimate was created.
Thank you very much. Okay, want to thank everyone for being here this evening. There will be a meeting next Monday, the 24th, at 6 p.m. here at, it's at IBW? Correct? Where's city? Yes, here at IBW. Those arrangements have been made, and we would, certainly invite all of you to come. We will be getting the response from the Ford Motor Company to this set of asks. Thank you very much.